Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be chapter 37 of this reading. We left the area as soon as possible when all was said and done, knowing that we were going to be blamed for what happened. So it was best to just let the humans talk it out amongst themselves, seeing as how they love to bitch about things that don't mean jack crap to them. Mainly, I just didn't want to deal with their whining, bitching, and moaning about how I should have handled it better. They can all go fuck themselves. I did what I was asked to do. Took care of the damn problem. Enough said. Yeah, sure, I got a little arrogant and careless, but my point remains valid. After I recollected my glasses, fixed them, and wore them once more, my group teleported back to Manhattan and into the street that was in between the hotel and the parking garage, only to find a strange yet strong sense of energy in the air. However, it didn't bother me at the time. I was too concerned about my car and wanting to drive it. Wolf wasn't bothered by the energy as well, but it was because she was very upset at both herself and very much at Fox. I had no idea on what everyone else thought about the weird energy, but I guess they didn't care either. Once back in that god-awful human-infested city, I changed her car back into its battered-old form and placed it safely in my inner right coat pocket, then adjusted my glasses. Afterwards, started heading towards the parking garage to check on my car. Serena turned to me and asked, "Where are you going, Ray?" "Is my car parked in here?" I asked, knowing that I wasn't the last one to drive it back home. My wife moved to follow me, with everyone else following her, as she asked, "Are you serious? Your daughter just died and you want to go out and drive?" It calms me. For the love of the creator, Ray, it's just a car. It calms me, damn it, I barked. So blate me. As we all walked down to the third basement floor, Serena and I continued to argue amongst each other about why I should or shouldn't be checking up on my car. Nanya and Blight had a nice conversation, whereas Wolf was silent towards Fox as she walked down in her full animal form. Fox, in her half-state, tried to get her best friend to talk, but Wolf just kept telling the Foxalkins to piss off. It eventually got to the point where Baraku had to step in and snarl at Fox, not to be mean, but knowing it would get her attention, making the Alkins give up on trying to talk to her friend. Baraku then turned back and continued to follow Serena and I at Wolf's right side. Not long after that, we all went silent. When I got to where both my car and my friend's car should have been parked, I noticed that both of them were gone. I glanced between the empty parking spaces and asked, "Where the hell's my car?" I turned to Serena, where she just shrugged her shoulders. Then we heard my car's engine roar through the garage as it came around the turn to the third floor. We watched it move into its parking space to find that Amber was driving it, with Jewel in the passenger seat slightly beaten up as she had been in a car crash. But even with how Jewel looked, my car was perfectly intact. After my car was parked, I walked over to the driver's side door as the window was rolled down, and I sarcastically asked, "Did you two have fun?" "Dude," Amber barked, "you didn't tell me of the spark spheres that were in the rims. That scared the shit out of me. I thought I had somehow caught the car on fire, or blew out the tires." Of course there's spark spheres in them. Every street racer in Wavryn has them. It's our racing style. I glanced at Baraku as we both laughed, then I looked back at Amber as she turned my car off, and I continued, "However, they only work if you're going over 200 miles an hour. I then looked around the garage a bit as I said, "So I guess that means—" "Shut it!" Amber barked as she opened the door to step out. With both half-bloods out, Amber continued, "I just wanted to shut some punk up." "Where's Yojin's car?" Jewel turned to me and replied, "That's sort of my fault, my lord." I looked over with a blank stare and asked, "You're joking, right?" Upset with how I was staring at her, the half-blood looked down at my car and said, "Sorry." Without them even needing to tell me, I knew they had totaled that car. Somehow, one way or another, they trashed Yojin's car within the short amount of time that I was gone. But since it was Jewel driving, that could only mean she just didn't know how to handle it. I didn't wish to know the whole story, or even part of it for that matter. I adjusted my glasses as I looked back at Amber and said, "You ain't driving my car anymore." "What?" she yelled. "That's bullshit, Zaec." "Good for you," I joyfully and uncaringly said, snapping my right-hand fingers to change my car back into its hidden state. That was the only way I was going to keep Amber from using it again, seeing as she didn't know how to change it back to normal. Afterwards, we all just headed back up to the hotel, because now I wasn't in the mood to drive, and I didn't want to deal with anyone else. As we walked towards the hotel, the energy I sensed became greater with each step. As I entered the elevator, I realized where it was coming from, along with who it belonged to. We walked into the room and first saw Kalita at the front door with her ears back, like she was upset with something. She then followed the rest of us into the room where we saw that the TV was on, set on the news, which was all over about what happened in Zaec. I looked over at my desk to see the most unknown thing that I have ever seen. Eyeless, wearing his old coat again and his hair pulled back into his ponytail, his ears and tail being hidden once more. He was relaxing in my chair, leaning back in it with his feet up on my desk as he watched the TV in the awkward way that I did, having the TV upside down and staring up into the mirror. At the same time, he ate chopped up portions of a pineapple on a black plate with a small gold fork, with one of my damn sodas opened near the edge of the right side of my desk. Thinking that he wasn't here to cause too much trouble, in a way, I walked up to my brother's right side and casually asked, "What the fuck are you doing?" Alice pointed his fork at the TV through the mirror as he swallowed some food, then asked, "Did you know that these news reports are never accurate, even the slightest bit?" He then used his fork to take another bite of the pineapple. Then with the food in his mouth he continued, "It's ridiculous. All these people do is ramble on about crap that doesn't matter to anyone." He swallowed his bite, then once more continued, "They say, maybe this should happen. Maybe that should happen. Or, this should come next week, or next Saturday, or something like that. But they're never sure. And if they are, they're wrong no matter what." Eyeless took another bite of his food, and still chewing, said, "They're all idiots and should all be fired." "Right," I said, feeling as though I was in an uncomfortable position. I then slowly turned to the kitchen, as if I was going to do something, while I said, "I'm just gonna go over here now." I only did that because, well, I just didn't want to deal with my elder brother right then and there. The guy's an ass. I just waved his fork up at me, sarcastically said, "Nice to see you too, bro." He then moved to look over his right shoulder at me, as he said, "By the way, I forgot to say, you're an ass for breaking my medallion." "Go fuck yourself." My older brother turned back to the TV and sarcastically said, "You're welcome." We just ignored Eyeless, as any other person in our life that we didn't wish to deal with, like Joey and Nanale. I got a few calls from multiple people, bitching and complaining about what I had done in Zaec. That went on until I finally threatened that if anyone else called me again, that I was going to kill someone. To my surprise, the calls stopped, and no one spoke about the incident again. About time someone understood me. Nearing the end of the year, with it being another damn Monday, I noticed most of the humans were getting all excited about this Christmas thing. They were all hoping that they could celebrate with my kind in one last chance to make peace. Bunch of dumbasses. I bet everyone on my side thought that humans were full of shit when they asked for that privilege from us. No one on my side was going to willingly have a celebration with a race that sent a brutal message that they didn't want us on their planet. That just goes to show you that humans really are stupid. They think that the holidays mean that everyone can get together for a peaceful conversation, when in fact it doesn't. Not even everyone on their own world will fall for that crap, which makes me wonder why they even bother. Not only were the humans getting excited, but also were Amber, Joel, Fox, Kalita, and Nanye. The rest of us, however, couldn't care less. Mostly because we didn't know what was going on, minus the failed attempt to be peaceful with humans. Wolf just locked herself up in the first bedroom to keep Fox away, still trying to get over what happened. Serena, Nanye, and I were cooking dinner as everyone else watched weird TV shows. After about an hour, my chair that Eyeless was sitting in had its back legs break, and he slammed his ass and back onto the floor. Once on the floor, my brother quickly yelled, "Son of a bitch!" "I warned him," Amber said, keeping her focus on the TV, while Baraku chuckled at that. "Damn it," Eyeless barked as he sprung up onto his feet. He then turned around to me and yelled, "Raekin, you moron!" I stopped with what I was doing as I looked over at my elder brother, confused and angry, and asked, "What the hell did I do?" "This chair is a piece of shit. Why haven't you fixed it?" "It isn't broken." "Well, it wasn't broken, jackass." "Piss off. You know damn well that the things humans make are pieces of crap, so technically, they're broken." "Bite me, Dorkon." "Whatever." "Good. Fine. Whatever to you too. Both of you shut up," Serena yelled as she threw her hands up for a second. "By the creator, you two are just as bad as when you were still on Book Door. Fucking acting like little kids bickering to one another." "Shut your mouth, woman," Eyeless barked. With that, I quickly threw the large kitchen knife that I was using straight into my brother's throat. Then as he pulled it out, I angrily said, "Stay your tongue, Dorgon. I will not tolerate your ignorance about my wife in my or anyone else's presence." Eyeless's wound healed as he took the knife and held it backhanded in his right hand, quickly raising it up to stab the tip an inch deep into the counter. At the same time, he grew angry at me and said, "Guess that means you and I still have a score to settle then, Raekin." We glared at each other in silence for a moment, then I adjusted my glasses and broke the silence as I said, "As my elder brother, you get picks on when and where." Eyeless chuckled at that thought as he gave a light smirk, then said, "You still honor a fine duel, even after the time you spent with this godforsaken world. Very well then, little brother. Let it be just outside these walls, in Central Park. The time, right now." "Very well then, elder brother. I accept your requirements, but you will be leaving now to wait for me. I need to do one last thing before we settle this grudge that has poisoned our conjoined blood." Alice's expression went blank as he said, "As you wish." My brother removed his grip from the knife and headed out the front door without another word. Then I quickly finished up with what I was doing and headed out for my final battle with him. I promised myself that our fight would end with one of us dead. Either his life was forfeit, or mine was. And I didn't believe that I was to lose, not while I was so close to meeting Father one last time. Out in the center of Central Park, standing 20 feet from each other, Alice and I stared one another down in anger. However, as to not get my lenses broken again, I put my cool little sunglasses away into my right front pants pocket. Storm clouds above never parted from before and continued to pour rain down onto us as the thunder roared through the city, powerful enough to rattle glass. I knew Eyeless hated the fact that I let Serena speak her mind, because most women on Bodor are to respect their place as a housewife that stays her tongue. But that's not what I wanted her to be. Whatever Serena wanted to be or do was her choice, not mine. And I promised that I would never force her to be anything other than that. However, I was sure that Eyeless wanted me to fight him for some other reason. I was sure of it. Eyeless and I had never seen eye to eye. So, through most of our lives, we fought over everything. He'd always hated me ever since I was born, and wanted nothing more than to prove that he was better than me in every way. I was always the one to win most of our arguments, but when it came to combat, Eyeless always had the advantage, yet never physically won the fight. As my elder brother, he was always stronger, faster, smarter, more strategic, and more powerful. But that was going to change. Before the fight began, Eyeless said, "Reveal to me Rakar and Enzar again, brother. This fight is not going down unless you show me that sword one last time." I was confused as to why he wanted me to do that, but it didn't bother me. I reached for Rakar with my left hand and held it backhanded as I changed into its dual blade form, aiming the blades up at the sky behind my back. At the same time, I changed into Zaec as the chain wrapped itself around my left arm. With my mixed tone voice, I said, "You have always been stronger than me, but now, I doubt that you'll be able to even give me a challenge." My brother laughed at that as he moved his head back, then looked at me as he too took his full darkness state, revealing his ears and tails without needing to undo his ponytail. With that, he said, "Even as the Endelment, you still can't win a fight against me, Zaec." He then sprung out a blood-stained dark blue piercer from his right wrist and continued, "We'll see how long you last. Try and beat your record of 5 minutes. With pleasure." In that moment, the fight began as the two of us clashed our blades rapidly and wildly, while we teleported throughout the entire city. Sometimes we'd smash through buildings, crash into parked cars, and broke apart pieces of the pavement with large scars that came from our shockwaves. After about a minute into our fight, Eyeless and I clashed and pushed against each other's blades. Staring into my brother's eyes, I gave a smirk and sarcastically asked, "Having fun?" Eyeless gave me a light smirk as well and replied, "It would be more fun if you actually started fighting for real." Maybe. I quickly swung Rakar out to my left side and kicked Eyeless with my right foot into his stomach, then charged my energy to change into my abyss form. I also pushed for Shadow's soul to fuse with Rakar's hilt, changing it into its more powerful and interchangeable dark bow blade. In my deeper and darker tone, I said, "But I think it's more fun to wait a little." Eyeless vanished behind me, tried to back kick me with his right foot into my left side, having also quickly changed to his abyss form and yelled,
"Me too."
However, before my brother could hit me, I vanished and moved around behind him to rapidly strike him with just my right fist and both feet. I then moved out of the vanish technique as I raised Rakar over my right shoulder and swung it at his back, slicing across his torso from his right down to his left. After the blade struck, my previous attack beat the crap out of Eyeless. Then he turned around and tried to back kick me again with his left foot. I turned to my left slightly to let my brother strike the right side of my face, but I was unaffected from it. I just gave a light smile and said, "Come on, are you even trying? Because that was pathetic." Eyeless whistled as he gave a big smile at me, which made me look at him confused. I then noticed that his left palm was aimed at me with a small dark blue energy blast charged in it. Just as I looked down, my brother shot the blast and struck my stomach. The attack pushed me back about 15 feet, then blew up and threw me down into the pavement 50 feet below. I swiftly used Rakar to brace myself up, then swung the weapon out to my left side. I looked up at Eyeless as he turned to look down at me, while I moved Ricard to hold it forward as I charged a dark red energy blast into my right hand. I raised Ricard over my right shoulder again and swung down to my side to shoot out a key slash at my brother. Just before he moved to block the attack, I aimed my right hand at him to fire the surge of energy I had channeled, which grew to be nearly twice as big as either of us. Eyeless dodged the first attack by leaning back from his left side, watching it pass by, then quickly realized that a second attack was coming. However, just as he turned to try and counter the blast, my brother got blown back, was thrown up and away from where he was. Afterwards, the surge ended and I lowered my right hand as I watched Eyeless fall to the ground head first. When he struck the ground, I moved my right hand up at him again and fired small rapid blasts of dark gray energy. After a few seconds, Eyeless flew up about a foot off the ground, started rapidly punching and kicking some of the blasts to bounce them back at me. However, each one that he bounced back only flew past me by inches and blew up as it hit the ground. Knowing that my attack wasn't working, I stopped and jolted towards Eyeless with Ricard pulled back behind my right side. Just as I reached him, I swung the blackened blade across me and slammed it into his piercer as he motioned to block it, Ricard still able to cut halfway into his weapon. Surprised at how far Ricard sliced through, Eyeless moved back as he kicked me with his right foot into my stomach. He raised his right arm to examine his blade, broken in half from trying to get away from me. Then he just reverted it back in as he ripped away his coat. I moved to swing Ricard down at my brother, but he shimmied to his left and countered with a hard punch with his right fist into my face. The force of the strike threw me down into a parked SUV, which I bounced off of after smashing into it. Then I flipped around and landed face down on the pavement. Casually, I stood myself up and I shook my head, only to notice that I no longer had Ricard in my left hand. I then scratched the top of my head with my right hand. I looked down at the ground and said, "Well, what do you know?" I stopped scratching and looked up at Eyeless, him somehow holding Ricard in his right hand, while I continued, "That actually hurt a bit." And then smiled as I said, "Guess I'll have to pick up the pace now." I flew up to be level with my brother, hovering about 15 feet away, while he looked at me slightly confused and said,
"I'm surprised, brother. Your transformation is similar to that of father's, but it seems darker, fiercer, almost frightening."
"Good, because now you're about to witness a nightmare." I gently swung my right hand up and across me upward to silently fire a powerful attack, then quickly swung my arm back down as I snapped my fingers and barked, "Death's embrace." Unfortunately, just as the attack took place, my brother was able to swing Ricard around him to block each and every single slash. While doing so, he stood in place and unharmed by my assault, so he used his last swing to hold Ricard at his right side. Eyeless looked at me with a smirk and asked,
"Was that it?"
Surprised and confused, I asked, "How did you block that?"
Death used that old trick on me once before, and just like now, it didn't work. Lucky bastard got away before I could, well, thank him.
Angry as I sprung out my left arm piercer, I yelled, "Then how about this?" I swung the blade up and across me, firing a key slash as I shouted, "Dark Assault!" However, like before, my brother thwarted the attack with swift movements of Ricard's blade. Having failed with that second strike, I jolted at Eyeless with my blade pulled back for a stab. Yet as I lunged for him, my brother raised Ricard to swing across his body from his left and shattered my arm blade. Luckily enough, I avoided being struck by the dark blade by halting for a moment and leaning myself back, then continued forward as I moved to punch him with my right fist. However, he grabbed my fist with his left hand just inches away from his face, then quickly struck my stomach with his right knee. I was pushed back a few feet. Then my brother moved Ricard to aim it at me from his left side as he said,
Idiot.
He stabbed the sword into my chest, then continued,
I thought you would have realized it by now, brother. No normal blade can stand against Ricard and Enzar. And as an added note, I wouldn't let Ricard and Enzar strike you 8 more times. Or else.
My brother quickly pulled out Ricard and sliced me 4 more times, then kicked me with his left foot to motion me away. I regained my balance and my body healed, then asked, What do you care, brother? I thought you wanted to kill me just to prove that you're all-powerful.
I did, at times. But now, I have other reasons.
I wondered about what I could do to strike my brother, so we stared off for a few seconds. Then I realized it and thought, Rokar, the stick. I reached for the stick in my coat and pulled it out with my right hand as I said, Hopefully this'll work. Eyeless glanced over at the stick, confused, then looked at me and asked,
What the hell are you doing?
Bring it, Dorgon, I barked, lowering the stick at my side.
Go ahead. Just try to strike me.
Eyeless grew angry for a moment and said,
Bold words, Rayakin.
For about 2 minutes, Eyeless tried to strike me with Ricard as we flew around the city again, but I dodged each attack that he gave out. Afterwards, I got a bit irritated and thought, what the hell's going on? No matter what I think about, I can't change back. My emotions won't help me. Just then, my brother got in an attack by slicing a bit of my left cheek. While continuing his assault, Eyeless said,
Not even the power of Abyss will save you now, brother. Once you are hit 9 times by Ricard's blade, your body will be consumed by the realm of darkness.
As he continued to attack me, getting in one more cut across my upper chest, my brother asked,
By the way, how do you feel?
I kicked him with my right foot into his chest, just to stun him long enough to back away about 5 feet. With that, I realized I was panting, along with my energy and strength slowly being drained. Eyeless stood up and said,
Whatever you're trying to do, Rayakin, it's not going to work. You're going to die here, by my hands.
Shut your goddamn mouth, Dorgon, I barked. My brother looked over at my hotel room and said,
I know that you'd do anything to protect your beloved wife, Rayakin. Back off, Dorgon. You leave her alone. Oh, I will,
he said as he turned back to me.
That is, if you can truly stop me.
I jolted over to stand in the way of the hotel room to defend against whatever Eyeless was planning. But halfway into it, he quickly intercepted me and sliced me across my chest. My brother raised Ricard up over his left shoulder for one last strike and said,
Goodbye, my little brother. I win.
Just then, in some delusion of my energy being drained, Serena's voice calmly said, Goodbye, Ray. With that, I quickly thought, no, I won't allow it. I won't. Then, without thinking, I shouted, I won't lose. Eyeless motioned to try and slice me across my torso downwards, whereas I motioned to block his attack by swinging the stick up as if it had a blade. To my surprise, a brightly shining white claymore formed from the stick and blocked Ricard's vile blade. In fact, what happened even forced Shadow's soul out of the weapon and back into my body, changing the sword back into its dual blade state. Just as the swords clashed, they cracked slightly right on the impact zone. The power between us nearly forced the cracks to split the 3 blades through the middle, while a powerful shockwave blew out and popped our ears to make them bleed slightly. The new bright white blade that was created by Rokar was 3 inches wide, 1/3 of an inch thick, and 4 feet long. It had a 1.5 foot long hilt that had a dark gray leather spiral design for the grip. At the base of the hilt was a blood red diamond, which was 2 inches big, and small black jewels that were placed along the center of the white blade until it reached the tip, each an inch big and an inch apart. Oddly enough, the sword wasn't sharp. You could even see that there was no edge to it, just a flat surface along the side of the blade. However, the tip was well tapered. It seemed as though it could pierce anything. When I swung Rakar up, I had closed my eyes, while Eyeless went to stare at where Rakar and Rokar met and fearfully said,
Rakar Gaken? No. Impossible.
I gently opened my eyes and calmly changed into my bliss form. And when I noticed what had happened, I said, "Even in this state?" I looked directly into my brother's eyes as he looked into mine, and I continued, "Brutality will fall upon you, my dear elder brother." Alice pulled back Rakar as he jolted about 3 feet from me, allowing both weapons to rejuvenate themselves, and he yelled,
"Empty threats, Rayakin."
He then raised Rakar over his left shoulder again and swung down at me and continued,
"That's all you have."
When he pulled Rakar away, I lowered Rokar at my side, then continued to stare into Eyeless's eyes as I let the dark blade strike me one last time. However, Rakar could not slice my skin when its edges struck my neck. Even though Eyeless knew he couldn't hurt me, especially after seeing that Rakar couldn't cut me, he continued to attack by rapidly swinging Rakar anywhere he could. Nothing worked, but that didn't stop him. My brother was determined to kill me, denying all odds against him that he had failed. As he continued, starting to panic, Eyeless said,
"No, it's not possible. It's just not possible. Nothing is more powerful than Abyss. Nothing can stand in the way of Rakar and Enzar."
He then raised his voice and shouted,
"It's not possible."
Even when he swung to cut my hair, I just let the blades by, watching as my hair just swayed a bit from the motion of the attack unharmed. I stood there, bored from knowing the fight was already over at that point, yet waited until my brother had exerted his energy so I could take back the weapon he stole from me. Eyeless looked at me in fear as he lowered Rakar to his right side and said,
"Impossible. I can't even cut through a simple piece of your body."
Yet even knowing that he couldn't harm me, my brother still denied it and just grew very angry and said,
"No, I won't. I won't believe it. I'll defeat you, just as I always have."
I gave a light sigh, then said, "I don't know what you're getting at, but whatever it is, it's not going to work. You've lost, I."
"No. I wanted to destroy Father. I wanted to be the Endelment. But no. They had to choose. They chose you."
Eyeless raised his voice as he clenched his left fist tight and shouted,
"They chose my goddamn little brother."
"Apparently you're not going to let this go." Eyeless moved to have Rakar in a striking position with his fighting stance and yelled,
"The hell I will."
I just continued to calmly stand against my brother and said, "Obviously you don't know what you're up against." Eyeless tried striking me again, each hit only bouncing off my body and having no harm done to even my clothes, while he yelled,
"If only one of us can live past this day to stop Father, then it's gonna be me."
My brother lunged for a stab, but I just dodged the attack and let him fly by my right side. However, he quickly spun around and motioned for me again. I turned to face him and started dodging each of his swings as he tried so vigilantly to kill me, though he knew he wasn't going to win. I floated back with each swing that my brother gave as he yelled,
I don't care that you are this Endelment. I don't care that you can use the powers of bliss. I'm still going to prove to you, and everyone else, that I, eyeless Dorgon Shero, am the most powerful warrior in all the known existence. I will become the ruler of everyone and everything.
I actually laughed when he struck my forehead with the dual blades, finding it did nothing but make my skin itch slightly. I even used Rokar to block one strike, which I found was more devastating than just letting the dark weapon try and damage me, seeing it nearly break both swords once again. Eyeless even tried using key slashes through a few hits, yet those didn't affect me either, as he shouted,
"This whole universe will become my kingdom."
My brother jolted back about 20 feet and raised Rokar over his left shoulder and charged a massive amount of energy into the dual blades, then swung it down across himself to shoot out an immensely powerful black key slash as he shouted,
"Die!"
A large translucent white wall, equal in power to that of Bright Shine but took no amount of power to use, quickly appeared and blocked Eyeless's attack. The translucent wall vanished as quickly as it came, yet Eyeless had moved into his vanish technique and jolted towards me with Rokar up, as if he was going for a stab. Even without Dark Vanish, my bliss state helped me see everything my brother was doing and counter it as if he was moving in slow motion. Though Dark Vanish can alter time itself once, the bliss form can alter time after Dark Vanish was used however it wanted. Therefore, I could make it seem as though I'm faster than those that have used the vile technique. In order for me to know that someone had used the technique, I have to listen very closely to what my senses are telling me. While my eyes can cause my brainwaves to see fast things and make them look as though they're moving slow, my ears can hear the energy frequency that the technique gives off in order for it to keep the person in its motion. Which oddly enough sounded like a soft and very irritating constant ring. Though I was able to move faster than Eyeless, it didn't stop him. He continued to advance towards me as he swung recklessly. Knowing that he was frustrated now, I used that to my advantage and calmly dodged each of his attacks. With every third strike, I struck him in a random area on his body with Rokar. However, he ignored what was going on and continued his assault. Still persistent in his action, Eyeless said,
"I have always hated you, Rayakin."
He raised his voice for a moment and shouted,
"Hated you."
Then, while he pushed onward with his assault, he lowered his voice and continued,
"Because Father always admired you so much more than me. He believes that he could make you the most powerful king there ever was, but he never even once thought about me."
My brother then took another moment and yelled,
"Never his firstborn son. I was the one that was born with the powers of darkness. I was far more superior than you before you even existed. So why is it that I was looked down as no one?"
Even after I struck Eyeless hard in his jaw, he continued to both fight me and speak. The man was absolutely ludicrous. I had never seen anything like it from him before.
"I did everything to impress him.
He yelled.
Everything. I even trained for 7 days straight to increase my power level, just barely under his own, when I was 9 years old. And Father still didn't notice me. I trained myself to the point where I had slammed myself into the ground, so far that I was barely able to recover from my wounds. And yet Father didn't care. All because of you, Rayakin. He knew he was going to have a second son. He knew that an offspring of his was going to be this legendary Endelment. But he didn't care for me. Once you were born, he didn't even care for your twin brother's sex either, nor even Salus. He just gave all of his attention to you, and only you. He loved you with every bit of his godforsaken soul."
I kicked Eyeless in the chest with my right foot, hard enough to paralyze him, then moved to grab his ponytail with my left hand and hold him from being able to fall, as I said, "That's where you're wrong, Dorgon. Father hated me with all of his blackened heart and darkened soul. He tortured me with his brutal training so that I would hate to be in battle, so that I would never grow strong enough to take control of his empire. But I knew of his plan. I defied all odds against me and did everything in my power to prove Father wrong. He hated it. It disgusted him to even think that I was of his own blood. But simply destroying me wasn't what Father wanted. As you said, Father wanted me to become something of his own creation. Either I was his servant like everyone else, or I was a commoner that could never raise a hand against him. I moved my brother to have us directly face to face and continued, Father ignored you because you were already too powerful. That's what he wanted in you, so that you could take over the throne and not me. Though I told Eyeless everything that I knew between Father and I, he refused to acknowledge it as he almost cried and said,
It's not fair. Maria. Mother. She's gone because... It's not fair.
My brother then quickly raised Ricard as he pulled it back for one last strike, lunging it at me as he shouted,
Bastard!
I let the blade stab me through my heart, yet while in my bliss state, I was unaffected by anything that had to do with Abyss. When struck, I released my grip on my brother, but even with a hit on me, he wasn't satisfied. I resisted him as he tried to continue pushing forward, while we looked directly into each other's eyes with a fierce gaze. Losing himself, Eyeless yelled,
You're the reason Mother had to die. It's your fault, Endelment. All because she wanted to protect you.
Confused and a bit surprised, I asked, What do you mean? Eyeless quickly motioned to punch me in my face with his left fist, ripping Ricard's blades from me as I was sent about 20 feet back. Before I could even start to fall or recover my balance, my brother jolted over and jump kicked me with his left foot, slamming me into Central Park 30 feet below. I was forced out of his vanish technique and struggled to brace myself up, yet he floated down to stand in front of me just a few feet away. Placing his feet down, Eyeless said,
Father wasn't completely sure of your powers, but he was cautious about them. On the other hand, Mother knew everything, seeing as how she was the one who took care of your pathetic existence.
Just as I moved myself up onto my knees, Eyeless kicked me in the left side of my jaw with his right foot. I don't know what happened, but my body felt as if it could no longer stand against my brother. However, I still had power over him. I just needed to find a way to get a good shot in. As I went to brace myself with my right arm, my brother continued,
She witnessed your change in power every time she made you smile as a baby, or even saw you cry. I knew, because I witnessed it too.
Alice swung the dual blades, not to slice me, but to strike my face hard with the blunt backside. He forced me onto the ground again. Then as I tried to pick myself up once more, he said,
She did her best to never overexcite you, or upset you too much as you were growing up near Father. But when he got suspicious, Maria did what any good mother would do.
On all fours, I said, No, it can't be. I tried to lunge at my brother, readying Rokar for a strike with all my might as I yelled, Liar! My brother moved to have the white blades miss by inches as he grabbed my collar with his left hand, only to motion me up to slam me back onto the ground for a moment at his left side. I dropped Rokar at my right side as I was raised again, while my brother stabbed Rokar into the ground out from his right. He then gave me a quick yet powerful jab with his right fist into my stomach to stun me, twisting his left hand as he continued to hold me up and choke me with my own clothes. Eyeless viciously stared straight into my eyes and said,
Mother gave her life for you, Rayakin. Instead of exposing your true powers to Father, she made it look like he was a fool and pretended that she was the Endelment. Father was threatened and did what he thought would be for the best of all of us. He obliterated her for both disloyalty and treason.
My brother then tightened his grip to choke me harder and watched me suffer more, so he continued,
All because of you.
I grabbed his left arm with my left hand to try and pull myself away, while calling one of the apocalyptic blades to my right hand as I yelled, Shut up! Unknowingly, I called both weapons to me, while also channeling Shadows and Light's soul into each sword. Shadows into Rakar, and Lights into Rokar. Amazingly, Rokar's new change was similar to that of its own twin, but was just white. I somehow tried to stab the swords into my brother, but he dodged my attack and let go of me so he could jolt back about 15 feet. With the weapons stabbed into the ground at each of my sides as I knelt, I reached for them to help pull myself up. Then Eyeless tried to quickly motion towards me for a strike with his right fist. I released both swords from my grasp and swiftly backhanded my brother in the face with my left fist, throwing him about 50 feet aside. He even broke through one large tree, then at the end of his uncontrollable flight, slammed into another. Though the apocalyptic blades were now within my grasp, I ignored them both and turned to follow where I threw my brother. With each step I took, my anger grew more fearsome than ever, once again forcing me into my more superior Endelment form. I felt no pain and no regret, and all I wanted was to kill. Nothing could stop me now. I didn't want to believe that Mother's death was for me, but I felt that was the only reason that she died. Because of Father's ignorance. Knowing that Mother died by both Father's hands and my own, I wasn't going to let Eyeless fight back for holding that knowledge from me. I was going to end it all and be that much closer to destroying Father myself. I wasn't going to let Mother's death be in vain. I had stepped into the center of the park just as Eyeless had pulled himself off the tree. Then he jolted towards me, oblivious to the new transformation I was in, and struck the center of my forehead with his right fist. However, it had no effect, but I still stopped and just stood in place. My brother tried a couple more attacks to wound me, yet none of them were any good. Afterwards, I quickly grabbed his neck with my left hand and pulled him towards me to punch him in the chest with my right fist, my strike breaking through his torso to just barely rip out his back. I pulled out my right fist and started rapidly striking Eyeless all over his body, while in my normal voice, I yelled, "If you hated me so much, Dorgon, then why didn't you just destroy me when you had the chance? If you didn't want Mother to die, why didn't you expose me yourself? Why didn't you fight back when you found out that Father had killed Mother right then and there?" I punched Eyeless in his chest with my left fist and broke through his torso again just after I had completely healed, then pulled it out and continued rapidly attacking him with all my might. I struck at nearly the speed of light, and with strength that could even possibly break through boulder and metal, shattering each of his bones and splattering his blood and sweat everywhere. While I continued my assault, I yelled, "What do you have to gain if you can't even see who you really are? A pathetic mortal that lives his life as a coward." And then kicked my brother in the stomach and shouted, "A hypocrite!" I jumped back a few feet and watched as Eyeless, out of breath and stunned by my attacks, fell forward onto the ground. I snapped my fingers on both of my hands to call Rakar and Rokar over to me once more. However, instead of reaching for them as they came by, I turned to my left slightly and had both swords fly by my front and back sides. They then stabbed through Eyeless's torso and into the ground, with the hilt angled slightly towards me as they held him down. I walked up to my brother and grabbed the hilt of each sword, Rakar with my left hand and Rakar with my right, and jerked them forward to have the weapons aimed perfectly vertical. My brother screamed in pain as he spat up a handful of blood. Music to my ears. Afterwards, I just let go of the two swords and stepped back a few feet to watch as Eyeless struggled so desperately to get up. Yet every time he did, I'd just strike him with either a punch or a kick to cause him to fall back down. Did that about 4 times. Then my brother gave up and just laid there on the ground, begging to be spared. More music to my ears. I laughed for a moment, then said, "You see, you're no more pathetic than anyone else here, So what makes you think you are any better than me just because you were born as a slave to darkness?" My brother cried as he looked up at me, which made me smile with a big grin and chuckle a bit. Yet after that moment, I became angry with him once more and continued, "Well, I'm through playing games with you." I pulled Rekar and Rokar out and changed the swords back into their crappy hilt forms, fusing the god souls back into my own as I placed the hilts back into my coat's inner pockets. Took a few steps back from my brother and calmly said, "It's over." I got more distance from my sibling and moved my right hand up for a powerful blast of energy, but just as I did, I realized something. I could truly obliterate him. I could do it. With one technique, I could do it. It had never been done before by one person, but I wanted to end this thing between Eyeless and I. I wanted to end it all and prove who was better. I was going to shatter him into the deepest depths of abyss, and I was going to do it by my hands alone. I lowered my right hand to my side as I pointed out my index and middle finger, then charged just slightly over half of my powers into the blast. I wanted to make sure there was nothing left of my brother. Once that irritating, ear-piercing sound came from Shatter, I said, "Goodbye, my dear elder brother."
"No.
Eyeless said as he struggled to brace himself up.
"You're my brother. My little brother. I can't lose to you."
He then moved himself to stand, hunched over slightly as he looked up at me with just his right eye open, and went to charge for a shatter technique of his own in his right hand. As he readied his dark energy, Eyeless yelled,
"I'll blow you away."
I just calmly responded with, "Then do so." Simultaneously, we swung our right arms forward to have our hands swing over our left shoulders, shooting shatter from our fingers, and had both blasts collide in between. A massive shockwave blew out from the impact, and both of us were tossed into a building that was just across the street from the park behind each of us. The shockwave also leveled down Central Park about 2 feet, and some of the buildings out to the sides were torn to shreds from the burst, while a few others collapsed and were sent to rubble. Surprisingly, no humans watching were harmed. Damn it. They're getting very lucky. It took me about 10 seconds to break free from being slammed into the building that was behind me, but once I did, I noticed I had changed out of my form and back into my normal self from such a loss of energy. I was actually more amazed I survived. Both the amount I used to create shatter and the impact that I had with Eyeless took out more energy than what I thought it would. Yet I had used most of my energy beforehand. Slight miscalculation. After I uncovered myself from the rubble that had piled on top of me, I said, "Damn, I wasn't expecting that." I then stood up and tried to take a step forward, where I just tripped and fell to brace myself on my hands and knees. I looked down at the ground and said, I feel like all my bones are broken. I can hardly move. Just then, someone in the distance shouted, "You lose, Zaec!" I quickly looked up, shocked to see that my elder brother was still standing after that attack. His right hand was blown away and his arm ripped to shreds, leaving his left hand only to ready another shatter technique. Eyeless was gathering his power for a final blast while having an insane smile on his face and shouted, "I knew this would happen. I knew you wouldn't have trained your body to contain more energy, but I did. And now..." My brother swung his left arm up to have his fingers come across and over his right shoulder as he shouted, "You die!" I got up on my knees just as the blast reached halfway towards me. However, before the attack crossed over the park, everything slowed. I didn't understand why. I had done nothing to cause it. After a while, I began to hear someone call out to me. Grandpa. Grandpa was calling out to me. I don't know how, but it was definitely him. I listened in to hear him as he calmly said, "Ray, you haven't lost this fight yet. I didn't give you that coat for nothing, you know. Use them. This is what they were made for. Use them, Ray. You still have a long way to go." Just as Grandpa said that, I realized what he was talking about. Then he continued, "You can't lose, Ray. Not like this. This isn't the end. Not for the Endelment. Not for you." Confident, yet angry, I quickly reached for Jinx with my right hand and aimed it forward at Shatter, charging what little energy I had left to spare. As everything began easing into its normal pace, I said, "This time, you lose, brother. It's over." When everything went back to normal, I pulled the trigger to hear a loud and powerful explosion come from the barrel of Jinx, where I saw something far more amazing than even a supernova. My energy, no more than 4%, was concentrated into the pistol and was shot out as its own shatter technique. In fact, it was even greater and more powerful than the original. My blast broke through Eyeless's and blew the left half of his torso away, still having enough force and energy to break past the second wall in the building behind him. However, even with that, I still didn't have enough energy to continue the fight. So once I saw that happen, I just let myself relax as my body fell forward onto the ground and smiled. Though I didn't kill him, I knew. I finally and truly bested my elder brother. Before I passed out from my loss of energy, the last thing I heard was from Eyeless as he shouted, Impossible! Impossible! How did you do that? That's not possible! That's not normal!" My brother roared in pain for a moment, then continued, "You can't save them all on your own, Endelment. I promise you that." This concludes the reading of Chapter 37. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. That being said, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 38.